All right, welcome to another lesson, lesson 20 for H Radio 223 part-timers. We are going to move forward. We last left off with a clock, and we are moving forward with changing, or should I say transforming rather, the clock into actual show prep, right? So I think this is the first time, looking at the first year syllabus, we only touch very broadly on content prep or show prep, should I say, and don't really delve into the semantics and more of the details. So this will be the first time that you're actually seeing it and actually applying yourself a little bit more, I say more definitively than to the show prep itself. And it's exciting, right? It's exciting, obviously, because you're starting to get a feel and get a good look at tangibly as to how we do stuff on radio. We do a show on radio. So it comes from Cullinan and Nash's Next Level Radio from Edge Publishing, Chapter 4, page 138 to 146, right? In this particular class, should I say, or this lesson, I will be focusing on 4.2.4 show preparation plan to insert the character. So that's from your textbook, right? We're also going to be looking, as usual, at external references. So there are a couple listed at the end of the lesson. You see that the lesson is quite short. It's 1 to 8, but there's a lot of practical that I'd like to cover, including I'm going to take a lesson, not a lesson, a prep sheet from one of my current shows that I'm just busy working on. I give you a bit of the context in terms of like it's the time of the day of the week, the show, I mean the station, what the show is about, and then obviously deciding why that particular content piece we're going to put in one content piece and just kind of just elaborate that just a little bit further to see how we can insert, create that content document. All right. So okay, so that's just a rundown of the lesson. Let us look at the first slide here. When we want to obviously look at preparing a show, we've got to look at all the possibilities that are available to us in terms of what content options there are out there in the world around us, right? So that is obviously endless. I do understand that, but we have to be, again, a bit of a filter for that particular listener and that demographic that we are broadcasting to. So it is part of your skill set, of course it is. I mean, there's a number of skills that are part of your total skill set that are required as mandatory, right, for being a great presenter or on a broadcaster, right? Including one of them is to source information and create content, right? But knowing this, it's about your approach to the way that you will see the world around you, right? And knowing that certain aspects of it are a great sparks of information that are going to be relevant and interesting to your listener themselves, right? So so in terms of the character map, just to kind of lightly touch on the character map, something that we actually delve into third year, and hopefully maybe touch on it a little bit more in upcoming lessons as well. Your character map is a definition of the listener, right? Okay. Um, Particularly, right? So we can also have character maps so every character on the show has a detailed character map that will help align the content with a presenter's character, right? Okay. So we can look at so I want to first talk about it from the listener's point of view. So it's a composite, like we have a character map for, let's say, maybe a composite listener, and the composite listener will describe to us what aspects of life, define what that particular listener is all about. So, for example, things like career and things like family and things like religion and, maybe lifestyle as well as, social media, etc. Right? When we bring it back to us, particularly a character map of ourselves. So, let's say you're part of a team, or you can be a solo act, right, on air. You can go and say to yourself, okay, which aspects of myself are important to note. And it's something that I have mentioned before in previous classes. It's very important to obviously understand and really take advantage of all your aspects that are very uniquely you as a personality, right? As a person, and then as a broadcast personality, right? So so tying that all in together, like for example, I would know certain aspects of myself are just going to talk very widely about myself. So very interested in things like tech or geekdom. I am very interested in self empowerment and learning. So a very big audiobook and fictional non. I don't like, well, what is it, non-fiction? I can't, well, real stuff. I don't remember the difference between the two. Always get them confused ever since I was a kid. Anyway, but I like stuff that you can learn from. So I would like more factual stuff, more documentaries, um, more radio documentaries as well. I quite like that, podcasting, etc. But also, let me look at, let's say, the stuff that I am proficient in. So I've got obviously I've got a wide range of computer skills, programming, that type of stuff, right? Very good at content creation as well. I know how to let's say edit sound, edit a video. I know digital in terms of digital strategies, digital media, digital advertising. I know how to do content creation just on an overall scale. Do have skills in terms of print, radio, and TV. Let's say things that I suppose, oh man, I don't want to carry on too much because I'm almost boring myself. Well, because I mean, I live my life, so I know a lot about myself in depth. But the aspects, I think maybe I can just cut it off right there. Aspects of a character map for a personality are supposed to again tell yourself who are you and what are your, like I say, your strengths, weaknesses. Again, very clear personality traits as well. Very clear involvement, for example, in charities or things that you're very passionate about, etc. And again, from the character map, knowing these different aspects of yourself, very easy then to go and apply yourself quite heavily to your show, and then obviously how you would like to obviously apply that to the relation to a listener as well. So and there are five other ways of inserting personality and characterization into music radio links. So obviously the first one is you. Again, we're looking at two or three dimensional radio when we are approaching radio. It's one of the things that actually and I'm going to kind of like Chris pity party you here, not because it's a pity party for me, but it's a thing that really kind of grates at me. It's very irritating when I come across a presenter that has had enough experience. I'm saying to you, at least 2 years of experience. You should know exactly what you're doing and why certain things or aspects of yourself and the way that you apply yourself to being a radio broadcaster and preparing, let's say, for a show are kind of very blank and kind of very one dimensional. And this is to explain my, obviously approach of two or three dimensional radio, right? So when I say this, I see a lot of presenters that are very lazy. I consider it very lazy. Like, slapping, coming into the studio, slapping on the internet, just searching for really basic stuff, like things like, oh, like what happened on this day is always one of my pet peeves, right? It's so incredibly boring, because it's so irrelevant, right? So many people do it, have done it, and probably will still do it, but it has no there's no oomph in it. You don't put any investment in just reciting what happened on this day in history that has been done to death, as opposed to, for example, I'm not saying that the content piece is irrelevant in totality, but I'm saying the way that you obviously approach it is irrelevant. So you don't look to see that there is a little bit more, like a little bit more dimension that you can add to that. So, for example, I would take an on this day and I would go and find never heard before soundbite from this person that has a birthday. Let's say it's a Martin Luther King, and we obviously know the very, very famous speeches that Martin Luther King has done. I would then go and look at how he was in terms of family life. So commentary around maybe his descendants, and how they would like obviously they hold up um, the king name, uh, and make it interesting. Do you understand? So now added another dimension to this on this day feature that's interesting now because no one's heard it before. And even I, right now, I'm like, oh, that would be cool to go and go and research. And that means it would be cool for my listener. They'd be like, oh, okay, I didn't actually think, we think of really big people all the time. We don't actually ever think about what their great grandkids are doing in 2024, and then I would make sure that I as well, for a third dimension, add my aspects of personality, input, opinion, and effect, in the way that I might find Martin Luther King very important and very influential, or a good icon, someone to look up to, whatever it is, or certain things that he said, or there was a certain speech that he had, or a certain quote that kind of like haunts me, or whatever it is, because it related very directly to a certain experience that I am going through right now as a presenter. I'm saying as a person, right? So I would add a third dimension to that. And suddenly, right, I have an on this day feature, right? So a content piece that has become super interesting and very cool, right? So three dimensions is normally how I go and say, listen, go ahead and do your stuff, right? But again, kind of retracting all of that and going back to what I said originally, a lot of presenters just don't do that. And again, it is super irritating, especially as a media practitioner and a radio practitioner, to see that constantly being thrown out as something that is quite savage for me, for a listener. It's like you take whatever I give you, and also like, and this particular presenter thinks that they're doing a great job, and they really are not. It's just poor quality, and it's a poor attempt. It's lazy, right? So having said that, just to kind of dial it right back to what you see here in front of you, wanting to think forward as we are doing prep and as we are doing content creation, think about building, like I say, some interesting three or two-dimensional, like I say, two or three-dimensional, ideally three-dimensional, content pieces that you can really make them pop, at the end of the day. Put in some sound bites, put in not the obvious information, unless obviously the obvious information is sometimes necessary to create, let's say, a bit of a foundation for carrying your listener from one point to another, right? Okay. Then you might have to go and mention or recap or revisit or update or whatever it may be, right? So these are the things as well. But you should approach obviously content creation in a way that's fresh, please, fresh, and also shows that you are once again. I'm repeating myself, but it is super important that you're actually interested in your job, right? You're interested in your job. You have passion for what you do. You have passion for servicing that particular listener at the end of the day as well. And then also passionate about the medium, which is then radio. Okay, here are the five other ways that you can go and use other bits, okay, of elements within obviously radio to go and make for a very interesting show. You can own the music information, so obviously knowing a lot about, let's say, certain songs that you play, artists that you feature, whatever it is, certain labels that have released certain whatever it is, charts, music trends, social media, viral, whatever it may be, right? Aspects, it doesn't matter. There's so much around music that you can actually include in your show that it makes it, again, a very, very cool part of what you can add to your prep, right? Uh, Obviously, information elements, right? So the stuff that we put into our show that, excuse me, so sorry for that. that is informative. Obviously, welcome, shake hands with the listener. So, points of which you will go and just again create a very initial connection with those listeners, and to acknowledge them, etc., taking phone calls and making sure that there are some lifestyle comments, so making sure that obviously, like we are current and that we are looking at again different aspects of being also multidimensional as a presenter as well. Okay. So a P2, so we spoke quite often about the P1 listener, right? The P1 listener being a person that only listens to one radio station and nothing else, right? But a P2 listener is defined as a listener that considers you to be their second, third, or fourth choice of a radio station. So again, someone that listens maybe to Metro Kaya and YFM, or let's say Metro Kaya 702, or let's say we're looking at 5FM 947 and maybe Jacaranda, right? Or maybe it's YFM, it's UJFM, and it's Tux FM, right? So we're looking at people that do have like a little bit of a bouquet within, let's say, their cars, or even let's say in their phones, or whatever it may be, and prefer to rather spread themselves across the attention of different radio stations, as opposed to, like I say, a P1 listener who dedicates himself fully to one radio station, right? So technically, they're sampling your radio station, and then this goal is to keep the listener. The goal is to keep the listener tuned in and to keep them obviously listening longer. And how do we do that? Obviously, great music. Obviously, good like a good balance of obviously how you plan the clocks, as we said before. Great content. Just keep them there listening a little bit, like a little bit longer. 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes on top of that as well. So again, this can be done by preparing and planning a show around that particular listener. Always listener. It makes no sense to program or prep for anybody else. We're looking at that listener. We're looking at them staying there a little bit longer, even after a certain segment is complete. They do have a little bit more time. They're quite enjoying the experience. They would leave the station on, leave your show on, and listen to another segment that is coming up maybe in 15 minutes time, that might last another 30 to 40 minutes, let's say. All right. Okay, so we'll do that as follows. So we'll front load every link creatively, right? We'll let the audience get to know you. We'll take callers, very obviously important. Develop story arcs. We'll tease, and we'll always contextualize everything so that the listener isn't lost. Okay. Uh, so, uh, so front loading, for example, like hooks, will really beef up that kind of very interesting reason as to why it is that you should listen a little bit more to that particular content piece. The getting to know you part is obviously allowing yourself to be involved and invested in your content piece, okay, and your obviously your show just in general. Taking callers allows for different voices and different personalities to feature regularly, obviously daily, like on your show. Taking those voice notes, taking those live callers, taking interviews, taking whatever it may be, adding a different voice, right, other than your own, so it doesn't become monotonous, it doesn't become redundant, or as well. At the end of the day, something that they can chuck away. They'll be like, oh, well, I mean, you are interesting, but you're just not that interesting enough, right? So you can't be the be all and end all of everything that goes in and on your show, because it's about again dimension, and it's about having some color, right, to and adding some color and depth to your show. Develop story arcs, for example. So we know about what an arc is, something that happens maybe part one, part two, part three, part four. Sometimes very cool, or also definitely more for a daily show makes more sense as well, as opposed to maybe a weekly show, so something that only happens once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, 3 times a month, 4 times, whatever it may be, right? So something that they can tune in tomorrow for, right? Obviously, teasing, is very important for us to throw forward to um to a particular piece that is coming up, and be able to tease quite provocatively, right? So provocative makes it obviously like a little bit more attractive. Provocative is attractive. and why, like, how are you saying what interview is coming? How are you saying uh, whatever it is that you're saying about a certain interview that is coming up in the next 5 minutes or whatever, or this really amazing little piece that you put together, or this shocking piece of information that you're going to play out directly, that's streaming live, let's say from CNN or whatever, that you currently are watching, that the world is watching, and there's a bit of an update on, or whatever it may be, right? So the way that we're going to tease a little bit, we tell them a little bit about what's going to happen, and they're going to be like, "Cool, that's great." It's like watching again. The probably the best thing that we all understand is a trailer to a movie, yeah, or trailer to a series that's going to be released or whatever it is. Or in my like, I've been stuck on a specific game that I'm waiting for that's going to be released on the 23rd of April, man, because they've teased it so well, man. They've teased it so well, and I'm like, I'm all in. I don't even know what the price is going to be, but I'm gonna pay it, and I'm gonna play it for days on end. It's about that excitement, right? It's about that excitement, that investment, and then again, that kind of buy-in, right? So, teasing at the end of the day. Okay, always contextualize. So when we say always contextualize, really fill in the blanks. Okay, so not everyone, everyone doesn't. Not everyone, just everyone, period, does not know what you're thinking all the time, right? So what's in your head can't be assumed to be understood by anybody else, right? Anybody and everybody else. So you need to contextualize why you are at a certain place in your content piece, or why you are doing something, or why this is important to the listener, or why this competition is happening on, what part of this competition are we currently at, if it's, let's say, long running or whatever it may be, right? We need to contextualize at every one single point in the show, either by recapping, or again also selecting the right information to include into our links, right? At the end of the day, to make sure that the people understand, that are again listening passively, listening with their ears, right, and not with their eyes. They can't. That's your eyes you see with, not hear with, right. They can keep up with, and follow with you. Sort of say move with you through your link, right? Very important to always contextualize why it is important, or why you're doing something, right? Okay, once you considered all of the previous points and the content has been created, it is time to put the content into a running order, or a runner, right? A prep sheet, right? So different presenters enjoy different types of running orders. Here's a basic template you can use for a runner. So again, just kind of an example of a very broad example of what's important for the show. So the name of the show, the date of the show, important numbers. So the studio number, the WhatsApp number, maybe the SMS line as well. Then as well, the website, and probably 10 to 1. Obviously, all your handles that are important, that you are most active on. Right, you can't give every single handle if you're let's say your station is active on many social mediums. Ideally, you would maybe just break it up. Maybe focus on Instagram, TikTok, maybe in another link focus, perhaps maybe on Facebook, LinkedIn, that type of stuff, right? YouTube, or alternatively, depending on how you want to sell certain things at certain times, or what's happening on different platforms, right? But the website is very important. We've discussed that obviously to length. Okay. Things to remember maybe in competitions that might be happening in your show. Also important to maybe put into your prep, right? I'm just gonna zoom in so you can just see, this is a very basic version, right, of prep. It doesn't have to. Again, what you will do is you will go and customize a bit of a better, a more comfortable approach to how you could put prep together. But obviously, at the end of the day, what's essential, right? You have to obviously say what time certain things are happening, right? And then also say what that thing is, obviously what element that is. Then if it requires obviously detail, it requires certain action, it requires certain things to be said, you would go and include that then as well. But very important, obviously, very important is the time that you are putting down there, right? Obviously, if there are any spots that you know of beforehand, right? Because spots are, unless it's again, we've spoken about formatted, unformatted clocks, or whatever it may be, that go insinuate that you would have a spot quite regularly, maybe at 20 past, a certain hour, or 22, or whatever it may be, or quarter past, or quarter to, whatever it may be, right? You would go then include that into your prep. It's just like a stock standard thing that you would say, okay, cool, this is great, right? But you would also say, listen, if I need to tease, right, or promise, right, tease, then I'm going to dedicate an entire link and a short link as well. You don't need long to actually tease, but also maybe on air. You must be very prepared, obviously, of looking at the clock. I'm saying the actual timing, the actual clock, because of the length of songs that we don't know, will vary from show to show, right? Okay, and will then obviously influence the length of your content links, so your actual show links, right? So not exactly the news. I'm saying the time of the news, as we said, then the spots that are non-negotiable in terms of how you can go and change that. More obviously applies to you and what you got to say, right? But we would sometimes, I mean, I do a throw forward like a teaser that might last 2 minutes, right? Because again, I'd rather do a teaser there for 2 minutes rather than cut off a song, play a song, and then cut off the song. And this is always leading up to news, right? Because I know, like, it is always better to never cut a song off and rather use that time just to kind of touch base with the listener, and make sure that I give a full-bodied extension of let's say a teaser to a certain piece. Make it super interesting, and don't obviously waffle. So still within that 2 minutes or that 1.5 minute that I might have, I'm going to make sure that obviously I sit and I say, okay, cool. Like, this is the stuff that I want to move from bit to bit to bit to bit within my length, and make sure that it is interesting still, and it doesn't feel like it drags on at any one point, right? Okay. So then we're going to a little bit more. So we're going to have a quick look at the detail, right, of this example that I'm sure is in your book as well. I'm sure it's in your book. Let me just go there. Okay. So there, it's the name of the program. It's a run sheet for a 45-minute program called Time with Farmers. The name of the radio station, the host, producer, the technician, etc. Right. Communication objective to engage women and youth and inform them of all the opportunities within is that guinea fowl? Yeah, that's guinea fowl value chain. That's very particular. But we do service. I mean, and there are obviously there's a show for everything, and there's a radio station for everything in this world, right? Okay. Anyway, all right. So having a look here, for example, and again, kind of very old terminology that might be used in here, which is fine. Again, live or tape. So obviously I pre-recorded here, time 30 seconds, and that's going to be, let's say, a signature tune. By the technician, the back time will be, let's say, about 30 seconds, right? So 2 minutes live, welcome remarks, introduce the topic of episode, mention the studio guests, what the type of format is. It's an intro, who's doing it, the host, and then the total time. So we're adding 30 seconds to the 2 minutes here, makes it 2:30 over here. I think I know you can follow that, so that's quite easy, right? Okay, so let's go ahead. Another minute will happen here. Pre-recorded elements. Okay, time tape. It comes from 3 minutes here. But the so yeah, two. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Why is that a minute here? 3 minutes. Oh, okay. Voices from farmers in the Yendi community in the northern region of Ghana. So it's a box pop, so pre-recorded element. Technician's going to play that off, and that's together. So saying from 2 minute 30, sorry, 2 minutes 30 seconds, one element of live into 3 minutes of pre-recorded stuff goes to. Then 6 minutes and 30 seconds that have passed over in that particular 45-minute segment, right? Okay, having a look at, let's say, 8 minutes into live, it's an interview with Mr. Whoever it is, a veterinary service officer at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. What type of element is it? It's information interview. And then it's obviously conducted by the host in inclusion from 6 to 16:30, knowing full well that because that looks like 10 minutes for me, right? So that seems a little bit confusing, right? Was going to be 16:30, right? Okay, so let's just take this because this doesn't seem to be adding up nicely, and maybe I'm missing something. But I'm going to just exclude this for the moment. Let's just take this here. At 7 minutes, another live session. We're going to take some phone in, so callers are going to have some questions for this particular guest here. What are you learning from the episode? Do you have any questions from etc. General public, subject matter, specialist host, etc. Right, and then so on and so forth. So, well, I'm just going to just complete that in there. So 30 seconds for from the live, obviously from the host itself. A bit of a live read over here, market and weather information. Scripted, right? That a reporter will come in, not a live read. I'm sorry, that's just a report, right? A pre-recorded segment here. Miss Whoever of Tamal talks. Tamale, right? Talks about her guinea fowl business. Storytelling interview. The host and let's say the farmer will be the person that is the people that are involved in this particular link. Okay, 3 minutes live there. Closing remarks, promo for the next episode. Some music in there it will be included, host and technician, and then we sign off, right? So again, not the best example. I think it's a bit confusing, just in general. But I'm not going to leave you hanging. Obviously, I'm going to show you prep again, as I mentioned before, of mine, so that you can better understand how we're doing things. Okay, so so there are we're going to look at some of these. Excuse me, some of these listed links here. And I'm just going to stop this here. I'm actually going to start just with a broadcasting clock. Have this guy from, I think it's the NPR, excuse me, NPR, speak to you. Very cool little segment here. I'm just going to go blow my nose because you can obviously hear. Let's just share sound here. And then here it is. So just have a listen to and enjoy it. Come on.
Open, go.
When I'm not making radio, I listen to a lot of radio. More than most people can imagine.
Set a down clock for 4:30, please.
My earbuds are constantly lodged in my ears so that I can press play and listen to radio at any moment that doesn't require me to talk or listen to an actual human being in the real world.
All right, well, now is the moment in our show where we endorse
Management Oversight by Tori Malatia.
Audio newspaper for a visual world.
AnswerMeThisPodcast.com.
The show's produced by Speaking Into Microphones.
Hello, it's Jason Isaacs.
Stand by to open Julia.
Whether I'm walking on secret stairs or doing the dishes
Open.
or driving the car,
You're there, but you're somewhere else, too.
we producers aspire to create driveway moments, TM. Stories so good that listeners can't leave their car until they're over.
I think part of what makes a driveway moment is the end of that moment. When you realize what time it is. You could have been staring at a clock all along, but for a while, for once, it had no power over you.
That time distortion field is one of public radio's secret, awesome powers, which is why it is such a shock when those of us go from being radio listeners to radio producers, like me and my friend Julia Barton here. The audience is hearing this.
It's hard to believe he's not nervous.
But this is what radio sounds like on the inside.
I'm 32 seconds short of what I'm supposed to have. So what I'll do is I'll just play 15 seconds of this song, and then while we play this 15 seconds, you will...
I visited NPR's headquarters in Washington, D.C., and sat in on the live roll of All Things Considered, their flagship afternoon news magazine show. There are clocks all over the studios, big red digital clocks, huge round analog clocks, special software and calculators.
Time calculators, where 60 plus 60 equals 200.
Hi.
Matt, Brandon wanted me only to play 15 seconds, but she wrapped up 45 seconds earlier, so now I have to play a long time. Is it okay?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a choice, really. Do we have enough to dead roll it?
I don't think so.
Monica Estativia directs All Things Considered 4 days a week. To me, it's the scariest job in the world.
That fear is built into the design of a program like All Things Considered. It's the show clock. The show has a set clock. It's a template from which it almost never varies. Every show that broadcasts or aspires to broadcast in the public radio system has a clock. Basically, it looks like a pie. It's round and is sliced in lots of weird ways. Some of the slices are very thin. There's 59 seconds for the program opening. We call that the billboard. 14 seconds for the funding credits. A fatter slice is 5 minutes for the newscast. The biggest slices are lettered A, B, C, and D, and they are the segments. That's where the stories and interviews live, and they have to fit together.
1 minute to close.
I remember I was very scared of the clock. It took me years to figure it out completely.
The clock is your master for the 2 hours the show rolls out. Everything has to be ready. Segments can't run long by even a second, because most of the local stations are automated to cut off the national program where the clock says they can. These times are called posts. You have to hit the post. Nothing can go wrong.
But of course, things go wrong every day. Someone reads too long, an interview runs too short, you might hear the dreaded dead air. Or someone rushing to hit the post.
Then listeners can hear the clock. He who can't be named in public radio.
And then the spell is broken.
When you look at this document, you see something very regimented, and we've talked about how it is very regimented in terms of things happening at a particular second. But the goal is for people not to really know it's there.
That's Greg Dixon, who also directs All Things Considered. But like most show directors, he never actually looks at the diagram of the program clock.
This visual representation was hard for me to reference quickly. I had a piece of paper where I lined out every single time when things started and how long they were going to be. It was my cheat sheet, and I brought it into the studio every day.
And according to Greg Dixon, he brought it in much longer than he actually needed it.
Until it was in tatters. But those crib sheets, and you will find them everywhere in broadcast, are a bridge to the place where the clock actually lives.
You can wake us up in the middle of the night and we can be like 59, 5, 28, 12, 28, 128, like 748. We know we can go down the entire hour without ever stopping because we know it by heart. And of course we had dreams about it.
At NPR, they're called director's dreams.
You lose control. You cannot regain back control, and you have lost sense of how much time is left in the segment, how much time is left for that piece, and usually it's like the worst panic attack. And you wake up and you're sweating, and you can't believe you just had another director's dream.
I've had those, where I'm on the board announcing Morning Edition on KALW, and the sliders don't do anything, and the buttons just don't look right, and so rather than try anything, I'm just paralyzed with fear.
Oh yeah, in my dream, I'm doing a newscast with no copy, and I just have to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk like an idiot until the clock goes down. And I haven't even seen a down clock in ages.
Now with podcasts, there is no time scarcity, no interlocking gears of local and national broadcasts, and that changes everything. But we also make a version of this show that fits inside the NPR clock, the C segment of Morning Edition, to be exact. 4 minutes and 30 seconds exactly.
Over by 1:43.
So I'm going to have to figure out a way to take all of these ideas, or at least some fraction of these ideas, and cram them into a show that's less than 5 minutes. And sometimes that really, really sucks. But you'd be surprised how often I actually really like the brief radio version of this program. The first time I really internalized the difference between doing radio and doing podcasts was when people would tell me that they wanted my stories to be longer. In the entire decade of radio I produced prior to this podcast, no editor has ever asked me to go longer.
Yeah, and I was your editor, Roman, and I can vouch for that.
You were so mean to me.
I was so mean. 4:30, sucker.
But podcasts have no constraints. You can be any length. The only constraint is the content. And people always tell me they wish this podcast was longer, but I think the show would suffer if it went on too long. And so maybe there's a need for a clock, even if the clock isn't strictly required. Constraint, or maybe just restraint in this case, makes for better art.
When I started thinking about the broadcast clock as a piece of design, I wondered how it all got started in public radio. NPR came together in the late 60s and the early 70s when network news was king. And those broadcast shows, of course, had a clock.
But public radio news wanted to be something different because of this guy.
I'm Bill Siemering, and I was the first director of programming for NPR.
Bill Siemering!
Bill Siemering. He came up with the whole idea of All Things Considered, which of course everyone in the business now refers to as ATC.
In the original mission statement, ATC was called a daily identifiable product.
But you decided that wouldn't be a good name for the show going forward.
Right.
Bill Siemering was among the earliest designers of the public radio sound. That sound included lots of audio and voices from the world outside the studio, and it called for a documentary-style approach, even to same-day news. For that, Bill designed a very open clock.
But we didn't have a lot of breaks throughout it, and it was, this frustrated some people because they thought they wanted a very fixed clock. There was a clock, but it was not that tight. It was tight where we had joins with the stations, but otherwise it was not. And I think that's one of the things that made it interesting to listen to, because it wasn't predictable that way. And you let the stories were leading the length of the piece.
The old ATC clock only had a few slices and a lot of open space. In there, one story might be 2 minutes, followed by another that was 20 minutes. It was open. It was kind of like a podcast.
But as Bill was saying there, not everyone appreciated that.
There was a conference 2 weeks after ATC rolled out, and the station managers just called Bill Siemering to the carpet for his fluffy, loose-sounding program. And there was something else that they really didn't like. And this is a digression here, but this is a podcast, so we get to have digressions.
And of course, I got this criticism from some about women's voices and all that stuff. That on FM, women's voices have the high frequencies, and you should see the meter, Bill, when women's voices come on and that kind of thing.
Really? They said women's voices were too high for FM?
Yeah, that some voices would peak the meter too much.
Oh my God!
The upshot, Bill Siemering was out of NPR a year and a half later. And in the years that followed, the NPR clock began a long process of becoming more subdivided. The women he hired, like Linda Wertheimer and Susan Stamberg, are well known. Siemering went on to help turn Fresh Air with Terry Gross into a national program, and he's the kind of the patron saint of creative, open-style public radio, including this program right here.
But being loose and open can also be its own form of pain.
People often mention to me, those were the halcyon days of All Things Considered, and I was there. No, they weren't.
That's Neil Conan, who's done everything at NPR, including, until recently, hosting the 2-hour live call-in program Talk of the Nation.
Neil Conan loves the clock. For him, it's an art form unto itself.
There's these little things that, if you've never done it, are impossible. If you've done it forever, you don't even think about doing them. How long is 5 seconds? 5 seconds is a long time. You can ID 3 guests and say goodbye in 5 seconds.
So it's not surprising that when Neil Conan took over Talk of the Nation, he added more time elements, more posts.
Because it turns out you've said pretty much all you need to say about medical marijuana by the 40, and you should go on and do something else.
Unfortunately, Neil Conan is doing something else now. NPR recently canceled Talk of the Nation after 21 years, and he resigned.
Neil Conan says artificial constraints make us better. And I know this as a person who edits audio stories. We lose perspective when we're inside the story, just trying to make sense of all our reporting. We can't tell what's important anymore. If we don't have any constraints, we can make boring and confusing stuff. The constraint doesn't have to be a time limit, but at least the clock forces us to have a perspective. It says stop right there and figure out what really matters.
Of course, the clock can also limit what you say, as we'll have to do in the broadcast version of this piece. Or it can create nonsense, where you suddenly have to fill time you didn't expect to fill.
So there was a day long ago when Neil Conan was not master of the clock. When he first started at NPR in the late 70s, he had to direct this new show called Weekend All Things Considered.
I was being briefed on the clock by the then director of Weekend All Things Considered, Deborah Amos, who's gone on to some renown as a reporter. And my question to her was, "You mean exactly to time?" And I think we ended that first show that I produced about 4 minutes early. I was so terrified of blowing the post.
So a while ago, I went to hear Deborah Amos speak. And afterwards, I asked her if this story was true, that Neil Conan ended his first live NPR show 4 minutes early. And she said they did. And that they had to grab the longest film music they could find in the studio, which was some kind of whale song.
No super designed, subdivided format is telling us when to stop this story. We're just kind of winging it. But you know, people in radio are always kind of winging it. Whether you're in a studio shed like mine, where I don't even think I have a clock in this room at all, except for what's on the computer, or you're in the broadcast palace in DC with clocks everywhere.
Okay, we had to do some adjustments, but we're good. Melissa, you have the line.
We just hope someone out there is listening.
Okay, see, disaster avoided. Yeah, she finished 45 seconds earlier.
But they're not listening hard enough to hear the clock monster that haunts the dreams of anyone who's looked into its dark soul.
Yeah, stand by. Ready. Open. Under.
All Things Considered continues in a moment.
Take her out. Ready. Hit break.
Take out Julia, but hold Roman open for credits. And go.
99% Invisible was produced this week by Julia Barton, Sam Greenspan, and me, Roman Mars. We are a project of 91.7 local public radio KALW in San Francisco and the American Institute of Architects in San Francisco. You can find the show and like the show on Facebook. I tweet at Roman Mars. Sam Greenspan, he tweets at Sam Listens, even though he does.
Okay, all right. So I hope you really found that super interesting. Once again, you know why I shared it with you, just because one, obviously it is listed, yes, as part of your references or something that you can go check out for added value. But what did I say in the beginning? Man, I said to you, like, I love documentaries. I love information, you know. Again, I think it's it really is bothering me. I think it's nonfiction, right? Anyway, whatever it may be, right? So, yeah, I love everything that kind of teaches you stuff like this. So it was super interesting. Again, to that extent. So when you're looking at, because you might be saying, "Wow, this is, I mean, so intricate," you know, and specifically with simulcast and simulcast shows and news shows, talk shows, that type of stuff. That where this type of like precision is so important, right? Where it is to the second, it really is to the second. When I was working at Prime Media, and I just like you put your eyes over, you like, you know, you lean over and you have a look at the 702 producers, and you look at it prep, the prep is so, I mean, it is, man, it's next level stuff, right? Seeing that, and I would say it would be how we'd look at the clock itself, and how I showed you an example of you know, how it's detailed to the second. The prep is down to the second. Because of the ads, because of obviously the length of the segments, etc., that they prep down towards the second. And it's just for me, it's just very interesting, you know. Obviously, again, if you are passionate about something like I am about radio, then it makes like passion just means fully, like holistically. Very interesting for me. Loved that little bit of a segment. I hope you enjoyed that as well. This is the other. This is the other one. One of this is the first reference that you do actually see that. You can have a look at yourself. And again, kind of that breakdown once again, where you see again, you've seen so many already iterations of what prep might actually look at. that I don't wanna focus particularly on it, just because it's just another version of what prep might actually look like. It's not so full bodied prep is what I'm going to show you in a moment. Actually, let me just show you now. Just before that, oh God, I just want to go and copy this over because I did send. So to be quite transparent, just to make this a little bit easier for the moment, what I do, or normally when I do decide to bring in a certain guest or whatever it may be, is now I'm obviously in the habit of using ChatGPT, not directly. So what I would do is I would say, cool, let me get a bit of a better idea as to what could be interesting conversations or some questions, right, that I could ask a particular guest, but I would then go and make them my own. Obviously, I would go and say, no, this doesn't really seem that important to me. There's obviously things that I want to ask that are going to be a little bit more relevant to, again, the audience at the end of the day, right? I'm just going to stop that share, and I'm just going to go to let's go into the prep sheet itself, okay? Just a little bit of just having a look at the prep sheet. Like this is, for example, the first hour. Very simple. 11 o'clock news. The opener is at quarter past. Very simple opener. Just kind of keep it very simple. Remind people about the socials. Throw forward to the music. And again, I would go and then I would cater a little bit more like on the day because you want to be able to have a little bit of like very warm banter that is topical, I suppose. For me, I like it obviously when it's topical, not fully spontaneous. I don't, that's just my approach. I don't like fully spontaneous links because I find that they are a potential for chaos, right? And waffling and all that stuff. So I would go and then I would cater a little bit more, something a little bit more relevant, quick and kind of like set and using the link as well, like using the opportunity not to just have anything of only interest happen half an hour into the show, right? Um, so I would use that. I would maybe go find a nice, like it could be a sound clip, it could be whatever it is, just to add a little bit of beef towards that, right? Oh, it's Thursday. You can must hear everyone here. I'm saying that that grass cutter. Yeah. Anyway, in the background sidebar. Okay, 11:25, for example. I've got something very simple because again it's a Sunday. It's called something about something triple play. And my choice of music for this triple play is going to be about being unapologetic, right? So I include just a little bit of how like because we are a station about positivity, so we have to, and it's a weekend show, so nothing too topical. Again, I wanted to include a little bit of like a little bit of facts around how to be a little bit more unapologetic, what unapologetic means, what it could mean to you, and obviously the benefits of it. The songs that I chose were Meredith Brooks' Bitch, Kelly's Caught Out There, and then obviously Madonna, Express Yourself. Say obviously because I mean, come now, come, it's an anthem, right? Anyway, and then I go into, and again, this is just a very bare, right? I would go and I would include just a little bit more, not too much, to not make it too confusing. Like 11:40 worst YouTube apology, so a kind of dynamic off, right? Being unapologetic, but then also seeing how being unapologetic can also lead to like the worst YouTube, I mean the worst YouTube apologies, because we are living in the 2024s where everybody says everything terrible and then they go and cry about it. About please forgive me, begging for forgiveness, whatever it may be, around there. Okay, so let's say here I want to go and I want to let's say so my feature here is called hashtag I feel fine with Leo Love. So Leo Love is a let me just say so Leo Love. So I'm gonna do a little bit of an introduction. So okay, hashtag I feel fine. Fine is okay is all about touching base with centered, your youth centered, and again, I obviously just fix this because I'm just thinking this is random now. Youth with youth centered issues, youth-centered issues. Okay, that obviously relate and are relevant. Okay, to all of us, all of us. You might have, you might have a younger brother or sister. Okay, friend, right? Friend, 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 you friend what? Definitely. I can relate. Definitely. Okay, it's been terrible. Definitely. Definitely. Were once in your 20s or 30s, 20s or 30s, 20s or 30s. Okay. Where life is complicated. It's complicated. No, life is and life is on a kind of a frontier, like a new frontier, a frontier of self exploration, and unfamiliarity, unfamiliarity. Like I don't want to make it too much of a speech here, but that is so. Then we obviously introduce really solid that. Okay, Leo love. Okay, is our weekly correspondent, youth correspondent. Okay, uh, who speaks, who speaks, quote unquote, for the youth. She's currently, let's say, I'm going to say she's 25 years old. 25 years old. Very, she's also very, something I can just mention as a sidebar. She's very quote unquote woke. She really is, right? And very intentionally, very intentionally, curious, curious. Okay, curious in her exploration of the world around her, the world around her. She does so. She speaks of this journey on her podcast, on a journey. Uh, okay. Her podcast, on her bi-weekly podcast. Okay, imagine with Leo. Okay, you can go find that. On Instagram, on TikTok, and obviously the podcast. The podcast is uploaded, is found on local podcast host site, FM, and then obviously that's on Spotify as well, right? Okay, Spotify as well. So make sure that the admin is there put out. Okay, so this week I want to talk about, uh, I want to talk about, uh, uh, yeah, bookmarking, bookmarking. Okay, life lessons. Yeah, life lessons life lessons as you navigate, as you are, navigate. I want to make it too. I'm making it sound too like clinical. Navigate, okay, through life, yeah, uh, through, through your own journey, through your journey, right? Okay. So then what I would do, well, because I'm gonna have obviously the interview come in there. I would also put the interview, let's say here, because I want to keep it there for about, let's say, 40 minutes, right? And there's obviously I close it in up here, interview plus, let's say, I'm just gonna say, yeah, plus closer, right? Closer, right? Closer. Okay. And then what I'll do just here is I would put, let's say, the questions. Okay, questions. So I'm just going to, like, just want to quickly include that. Just make sure that that's is there. I also want to watch my prep length, right? And it mustn't be too long. So I've got three out of 3 pages. Yeah, just because it's a directive from the station. I love very, very long prep, but also I can see the distraction in it, and what I would do. So why it throws you off. So I want to just conduct an interview about bookmarking life lessons. You might consider asking questions that delve into the importance of learning from experience. So I want to just put as a sidebar note. Okay, consider. Okay, so I'm gonna make this asking. Okay, consider. Let's say consider asking questions that delve into the importance of learning from experience, the process of identifying and documenting these lessons, and how they can be applied in the future. Right. So I'll put that in the back of my mind just for now. Where's that thing? Shut up. Right. Should have doing things, yeah. Okay, then I would, let's say, just to keep this nice and short, genuinely, I'm just going to go and I'm going to filter ones that I feel, because I can't keep talking and talking to Leo. It's just I don't want to make it too long, don't want to make it too boring as well. This is a cool question to kind of like intro it, like, and also I would say there, how do you quote unquote document life like a life lesson, also kind of like yes, I want to like it's so much more because it's so much more it's so much more because it's so much more than just a journal entry, just a journal entry, right? Okay. Let's kind of have some cool conversation around that. Train of thought can also vary, right? Can you share an example of valuable life lesson that you learned and how you applied it in then life? So I'm going to say rather, can you share um, an example of the latest, the newest or the newest or the latest, uh, most valuable life lesson that you've learned. Okay, how do you typically identify and reflect on important life lessons? Um, how does one identify? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna say just mind reflecting, identify, important life lessons. Okay. Um, because it's important to know that you can only learn a lesson once it's complete, right? Otherwise it's chaos. Otherwise it's chaos. It's chaos. Yeah, so what sure that obviously I am. Otherwise, it's chaos. Do you think certain life experiences are more likely to yield valuable lessons? So it's a bit repetitive and boring. Okay, so have you had a mentor or someone that has uh, yeah, important life lessons? Okay, so I would say here, say four. Um, what is yeah? So what is important? What is the process? What's the process of drowning out, drowning, drowning out the noise of the world around you? The noise in terms of like advice, Okay, leadership, mentorship, leadership, mentorship, mentorship, influence, influence, influence. Okay, in making your own decisions. Making your own decisions. Making your what is a process of drowning out? Okay. I want to kind of take a little bit of variance off. How do you ensure that you remember and easily access your lessons? So, for me, it's a bit repetitive as well. Can you describe a challenging situation where you applied a life lesson you had previously learned? So for me, I would take this and I'd say, why? Okay, life lessons. Okay, life lessons are um, contextually relevant. Contextually relevant. In other words, so i.e., in other words, okay, it worked. It worked uh, in a certain time, at a certain time. So at a certain time, at a certain time, at a certain time, with yeah, like external, within external, yeah, within external so what I'm looking for, like impressions or uh, external see my second one, I actually think of the uh um uh, uh external, what's what I'm looking for now, external man, man, what is I'm looking for? Oh, damn it. Okay, within external, let me just then try and reword it. Okay, with a certain time, okay, with a certain capacity, certain holistic capacity, capacity, okay, holistic capacity, okay, in a certain, contextual. Okay, environment as well. Environment. Okay. 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 Does it still work? Does the life lesson still apply? The life lesson still apply today? Right. I'm going to basically say, then obviously I'll reword it better on the air. Because my writing's a little bit too formal as well, so it's a bit too clinical. Um, so I would say, look, I mean, like you learned a lesson when you were maybe 14 and you knew only so much, right? About the world around you. Also at that particular time, perhaps maybe like you didn't have a great relationship with your mother. You didn't know also how to talk to certain people, and that life lesson obviously happened, right? Okay. But obviously now you are a completely different person with different. Obviously, there's a different external factors. That's the word I was looking for. Damn it, man! External factors that are influencing the way that you have your the kind of the capacity, your mental and the ability of your mental status, your mental prowess or whatever it is, and then obviously that has also changed the way that you are. So applying that same life lesson that you did learn at 14 has a very, very kind of limited range in like a 2024 context of yourself, right? And how do we find a common ground between the two? So I'll do that. So in what ways do you think documenting life lessons can benefit others? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I would say with this one, is it is it important, okay, to share life lessons, life lessons with another person, right? How do you differentiate between temporary challenges? Yeah, that's a really good question. That's also something that I would have asked, right? What advice would you give to someone So what is so mine is what does it look like? What does learning a lesson? Does learning learning a life lesson look like? Okay. What advice would you give to someone else who wants to start documenting? Okay. So I would leave it at that. Okay. Just to show you how that is prepped. What I would like to do, just to make it a bit more holistic, remember I said to you what I want is holistic content, right? Is I would go and I would include I would either play it maybe here, or I would either play it let's say in between songs, right? Or I would play it maybe as part of like maybe in between as a conversation starter. I'm gonna go and find, let's say, a good sound bite that showcases like a real 20-something-year-old, like explaining and sharing their difficulties, right? Right now, like on YouTube or on TikTok or whatever it may be, just to give it a little bit more life, right? Like I said, so that what I said to you, more 2-3 dimensional content at the end of the day, so that there is a better content piece. Okay, so as we move along, I will continue to show you different versions of how to kind of refine this, whatever it may be. But that is the lesson for now. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next